Laura, thank you so much for coming to the podcast. I want you to, introduce yourself, but not yet. I'm looking at many words I can use to describe you, not only because that is who you are, but that is who you are to me as well, right? I always see you as a leader. I see you as a content creator, and I see you as an entrepreneur, a female business leader, because we don't have a lot of female business leader here in Canada, and I'm going to touch on that as well in our conversation. And I can call you a comedian as well, because I've seen a lot of your, a lot of your content online, and I'm like, how can I describe this woman about knowing how to be everything that I know how to be, and then she's still very funny. And I just want you to introduce yourself to my audience. That is who I know you to be to me, but who is Laura?
Wow. Oh my gosh. I feel like I could cry. That was probably the nicest introduction I could have received because we've obviously known each other for a long time and I've seen your progress in doing this podcast. And so the feelings are very, very mutual. Thank you for having me. Episode 22. I'm very excited. Yeah. I'm very excited. Who am I? I am quite honestly a person who has had 1,000 careers already. I'm 40 years old.
You're still young.
Sure, I like that. My body doesn't always feel that way, but I definitely think so. And I think that there's a lot of time left. So who knows where I'll head in the future. But as of right now, my current role is what I like to call the Chief Care Officer for REC Canada, as well as an owner of From the Ground Up Academy. What is a Chief Care Officer? Really, my role is to make sure that the team, the staff, the agents that are working with our leadership team are happy, they're motivated, they're inspired, they feel heard, and they get the help that they really want. So that kind of takes up most of my role. But previously, I've been a real estate agent. That's how we would have met. Before that, I went to school for nutrition. I worked in fashion. So it really, it's been a journey to get here, let me tell you.
And I like when you said you've done a lot of careers. I think a lot of leaders that I've been able to bring to this podcast, I've been able to sit down. Actually, they always come from, different kind of background, and then that's what's made them to be who they are now, put them to the position they are now. But let me start with real estate, which is the part of your life that I get to know you from, right? I remember the first day I came to this, I shared the same story with Jazz Tucker on my 2 episodes back last year, and I told him about how I felt about it the first time I came here, right? He he said it on his podcast. I've listened to both of you on the podcast. Over 70% of his podcast, I told him before I met him, was what I listened to.
Yes.
And I use a lot of things that I learned from you and him to kind of start creating content, to start educating people, right? And I always wonder, I've heard from Jazz how he got into real estate. I always wonder, how did you get into, all of us always hear this story. Oh, you're good at sales. You can do well. Get your real estate license. Is that how you got into the business as well? How did you get into real estate?
Yeah.
And then, did you start investing before you become an agent or what?
Okay, great question, because you're right. The average real estate agent didn't dream of becoming a real estate agent when they were kids. Most of us didn't. And maybe Jazz did. You might be the only one.
6 years ago, I was writing code, computer code. I was working IT. So.
And exactly. And what happened to me was like a small little birdie put in my ear. Oh, you're good with people. You're good with people, therefore you should be a real estate agent. I mean, there's so much more to being a real estate agent than just liking and being personable with people. And I learned that the hard way. I think what really did it for me was I was working in the fashion industry, and that's a bit more of behind the scenes. It's not as glamorous as it looks like out in the real world. And I quickly realized if I ever really want to amount any wealth for myself, it's not going to be from working in the fashion industry, or at least I didn't feel it, or it's very, very difficult to do so. So I actually decided to leave that industry, go back to school to get my MBA. And I was specializing in marketing and communications. And that's when someone said, oh, you're great with people. You like presenting. You should be a real estate agent. That's also around the time when $1 Million Listing came out, with Ryan Serhant and in LA, the other one. And I was like, oh, this looks fabulous. I get to dress in nice clothes, which I love to do, right? Because I like the fashion side. So I was like, I get to look cute all day, every day. I get to drive a nice car around.
Oh my
I get to go through beautiful homes, and I get to make a lot of money while doing it.
Oh my God.
Naive, so naive. I was so wrong, but that's honestly the truth of why I really got into the industry. I wanted to build wealth for myself, and I thought it would be a good way to do it and look cute while doing it. That's the hope.
When you got into the industry, did you see that nice car and a lot of money? Did it come at the beginning? The first year of real estate, describe that to me, please.
My first year of real estate, I had beginner's luck. So I
Okay.
was determined that I was going to be the bridal path listing agent. So I had a couple interviews with some of the people who do quite well in bridal path. Ironically, I just used my my connection with Jazz and Royal LePage Signature more as like a test interview. I really had no intention of joining this brokerage. But then I met the ultimate salesperson, which is Jazz Hacker, and he completely sold me, and I came onto his team. But I was adamant that I was going to work in luxury listings. So I said, okay, well, at bare minimum, let me have a minimum price point that I'm going to tackle, which was at that time was $1 million. And $1 million in and around this area, sadly, is not a luxury price point. I'm sure if you're listening from other areas in the country or the world, you're thinking, what? But like that is, at that time, was a teardown. My first listing was a hoarder home.
Wow.
And I wasn't even allowed inside the home. I did the deal on the street, and I got the listing paper signed on the street. And it was you cannot show this home. You cannot let anyone come inside. It's walk the lot only. And I listed it for just under $1 million. And within 3 days, I sold it, I believe, for $1.2 million. I was like, I'm amazing.
Wow.
I'm so good at this job. I'm going to be the best real estate ever. I can sell houses in 3 days. But of course, as a lot of people have, it's that beginner's luck. And it was kind of crickets thereafter. I didn't have much going on for about the next year. And I was like, ooh, this is a lot harder than I thought. I'm not dressing in the cute clothes, and I don't have the nice car yet. So
within that first deal and your next deal, how long does it take you
to get that deal?
to get the second deal?
Oh, the second deal, I don't think I did another deal until 6 months later, but the closing was like for another 6 months. So I made a commission check in January, and I didn't make another commission check until the next year. So yes, that $20,000 commission check was nice from the first deal, but that's all I made that year.
I've seen a lot of negative things about agent, like a lot of hate words online. I have Steven Sargent on my podcast, who I believe you know as well. I'm on a podcast, and he was talking about how a lot of salespeople actually are making minimum wage. Mm-hmm. But people think because we are on the front line of, we are the one selling real estate, we are the one doing the real estate, therefore we are the one that affect the price of real estate.
Yep.
And I always tell them, ask your politician and your office holders. They are the one that knows the reason why our real estate is going up. The reason why I'm asking this is, there are a lot of things that goes into being an agent. That is more than just showing a house. That is more than just driving people around. That is even far more than just saying, I want to buy and sell. You have to build a relationship. I'm going to close the property in the next 2 months with a client that I've been nurturing for 2 years. Calling, talking to them, show them over 35 properties. And we finally get one that we're going to be closing probably in March. So when you see it, words or messages to real estate agents online, how do you feel? What do you think those people need to understand about our industry?
Yeah, I've myself had some hate messages online, like, you real estate agents are the worst people in the world. You're the problem. You're the reason for this. You put up a sign and you make a whole bunch of money. And look, at the end of the day, I just told a story about how that was the case. Right?
For 12 months.
But like I made a lot of money in a very short period of time, and I didn't do that much work for it. But that really is rare. What is much more common is that people are coming into the office every single day. They're hitting the phones. They're working way longer than a 9 to 5. Realtors are working 24/7, 7 days a week. Even when you're on vacation, there's you don't set an autoresponder saying like, I'm away, I'll deal with this when I get back in 2 weeks. I have been on vacations. Both my husband and I are both real estate agents. He sells commercial real estate. And so both of us are in, the cab to go somewhere from the airport or whatever, and our phone's back on, and it's answering all the emails, making the phone calls whenever you have a spare chance. And so I think first and foremost, I want to almost empathize with these people, because I suspect something is happening in their life where they're almost like not happy and they're looking for other people to blame. I find generally when people hate on other people, they hate on industries, it's a lack of knowledge, a lack of awareness, and mostly a lack of maybe accountability and confidence in themselves because they see a successful looking person. That person A could be like have so much debt they have no idea. And I know a lot of realtors who have fallen into that trap because they have to keep up with the Joneses. They have to look the part. They have to look like they're successful in order to get the clients. People don't realize how stressful that is. And also, like, why are we judging everyone so much? Like, there's people who make a lot of money in the world, but they deserve it usually. Like, that's the value that society has said you're worth. We live in a country that is built upon people working hard. And I think that there's no problem with it. So I try not to take it personally, although every time I get a little comment like that, I'm like, oh, but you don't know me. I am kind. I am nice. I am hardworking. I'm all these things. I just happen to make different choices than they made in their lives. And they can make different choices. And I understand that people have different pasts and histories. And that's how people kind of come to be. But I try not to take it too personally. Otherwise, I would fall apart probably.
Of course, of course. I know you're a real estate agent, you're a business. We're going to touch on the businesses, other business you have as well. But I want to talk about investing. REC Canada was part of the team for a little over a year, and as I told Jazz, I learned a lot from Jazz from the team. And I know the team focused a lot on investment. But for you personally, when did you start investing? Did you join REC before you start? Because I believe one of the podcasts said you own a property.
Yeah.
You and your husband. But my question is, when did you start investing?
Yeah, it's interesting. Investing always to me seemed like stocks. Like growing up, maybe that's just because that's what my dad generally invested in. My dad didn't invest in real estate. He owned his primary
You know why?
residence.
Why he doesn't?
I think he probably understood the stock market better than maybe real estate. Also, my dad's from the time when he bought his first property here, his interest rate was 18%. I mean, that's hard to wrap your head around that being a good
18%.
investment. Right? Yeah, exactly. So you're thinking that's probably not a good investment, right?
Right.
At that time. So, maybe that was just sort of his experience. So it never really dawned on me that like, I knew buying real estate was great in terms of your personal residence. I knew I always wanted to buy a house as soon as I possibly could because I had heard that gets you in the game and you can really just kind of like live and play off of that. And it's a great investment in the long run. But the idea of getting another property really never occurred to me unless that other property was like a cottage or like a recreational property for yourself, never as like, let's get a tenant in there. It wasn't until I joined the REC team and I started working with investors because a lot of our database were investors. And I would have conversations with them and then they would ask me like, well, Laura, do you invest? And I realized it's hard to tell somebody how great an opportunity is when you haven't pulled the trigger yourself. And I realized like, if I'm going to really believe in what I'm selling, and I did believe it. I believed it for everyone. It just always seemed like something I wasn't capable of doing. And then finally one day I said, no, I'm going to start saving all my money from all my commission deals and I'm going to get that investment property as soon as possible. So within about 1 year of me making that decision, I really, really saved and I was able to purchase my first condo investment, which is now closed. I bought it pre-construction. I actually did it without my husband.
Wow.
I like went off to the sales center one day and I was like, I just signed on the dotted line and I came home and I was like, honey, I bought a condo today. And he was very, very supportive. He has since gone on to buy his own pre-construction condo. I mean, obviously we're doing it together. We're married, but, just being that ability to make a decision for myself with my own money, that felt very empowering to me. And I have the unit now. It's closed. I have tenants living in there. Is it going exactly smoothly? No. But I've learned a lot, and I think it's going to be a great investment in the long run. Yeah.
When you were buying up, because I asked the investment part because people own their primary home. I know a lot of people that own their primary home, and the word investment to them is just like foreign. No, don't talk about it. I just want to pay off my mortgage and be done with that. Do you think owning the primary home alone can actually give you the wealth we are talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I personally have done very well on my primary residence. My husband and I bought about 12 years ago.
Okay. Which is really cool.
Yeah, we lucked out. Interest rates were super low. We actually got to negotiate the price down. Like it wasn't one of those markets like the market I was talking where you had multiple buyers within 3 days. It wasn't that. We bought in a good location, detached home, and it's probably doubled, if not a little bit more, over the course of that 12 years. I mean, it's gone up and down, of course, but up and down upwards. So yeah, I mean, I think if we were to sell that property and move somewhere way cheaper, that would be a great investment. The problem is like my money's stuck in there and I can't really sell it. I have refinanced the property to buy more property. So that's been useful. So you can do that again and again. And I think that helps you build wealth. But that depends on your risk tolerance, right? Like how much are you willing to refinance one property to buy more? I think my risk tolerance is a little bit higher than my husband's. So that's always an interesting conversation that we have. But so I think if you can, you try to buy as many properties as you can for as long as you can, up until, there is no rule of thumb, but I heard Chris Slightum, our broker of record, once say, you buy as many properties as you can until you turn, I think he says 55. Then once you're 55, then you start like trying to pay down those properties. But if you can accumulate a nice little portfolio for yourself, then that will essentially be your entire retirement plan, because who knows about RSPs? And of course, as real estate agents, we don't have any of that. So we're literally going to live off whatever we make, right? So that was kind of the advice that I took to heart, just trying to do it again and again as many times as possible.
Let's talk a little bit about your social media, presence and what you do on social media. As a real estate, I know you don't really call yourself a real estate agent, but you're still a licensed real estate agent. What if anyone wants to start their real estate game now? When I watch your profile, sometimes I can't say this is a real estate agent. I just see a human that love fashion, that love food, that talk about dogs, that go for a walk. If I'm starting today and I want to get into, creating content, what do you think I should focus on? And I genuinely want to know this, and I hope about 2 or 3 of the people that asked me this question the last 1 or 2 months, I hope they're going to watch or listen to this podcast, because one of them I can remember very well focus on the views a lot. Like how many people will watch my video? And honestly, I don't care about the views. Probably on my YouTube you'll find 200 views.
Up until this video. Then
Yes.
this video is
This
going to
was
be the
gonna
one.
like
This is the one.
1 million views, right? So, I want to know what strategy should I use if I'm starting my journey into creating content today, as an agent or as anyone that just have something going on for them.
Yeah, this is one of those cases where I would say, do as I say, not as I do. If you're a real estate agent, you need it to be obvious that you're a real estate agent. You can't be a secret real estate agent, okay?
She's a leader now. That's why.
Yeah. And how do you do that? Well, you talk about real estate. If you're new and you don't know a lot about real estate, ask questions to other people, see if they'll put their face on camera. Start a podcast, bring on experts where you're the one asking questions. You're not necessarily the one with the answers. I also think a great rule of thumb is to always remember stories from your day and shoot content that says, a client asked me this today. I brought in an inspector who pointed out these 3 things today. This is why it matters. Look at your content as a way to educate your client base, which hopefully you are following a lot of them online and they're following you and they're going to see that and they're going to start to over time look at you as the authority. And until you are the authority, at least they're looking at you like an honest real estate agent, because as you mentioned, we are so hated in this industry. Everyone thinks we're sleazy, slimy. We're all, trying to hide the fact that we don't know what we're doing. And that is true for some.
Exactly.
So be the opposite. And just showcase like, hey, I'm learning. Hey, this is what I found out today. I didn't know this yesterday. This is what you need to know about locks, mold, fire, gardening, anything that has to do with a house. And you bring on those experts anytime that you don't know. So that would be my suggestion. The case where I think you should do what I do is showcasing the other parts about you. Because real estate agents aren't just real estate agents. I mean, that's obvious to whoever's listening. But we don't show that. A lot of people will have their realtor page and then their real page, like their family page. And I'm like, I like to see stuff about you. Like, I like to know, we mentioned offline that you like to cook.
Yes.
I would probably be more interested in your cooking videos than your real estate videos until that is when I'm ready to buy or sell a home. But what are you going to do to entertain me in the off season, like when I'm not trying to buy or sell or invest in a property? Well, now I'm going to look at your at the other stuff that you're doing. So for me, I like to showcase a lot of my commas, which is my love affair with my dog, the fact that I like reading, that I ski on the weekends. I don't like cooking, but I like eating. So I take a lot of food pictures that are never of me cooking, but I do enjoy eating. So showcase that to people. I think where people tend to get nervous is they think that that's not professional.
Yes.
But people don't want the professional person anymore. People don't want that sleazy salesman that like always has the right thing to say and who is all prim and proper in their suit all the time. Like throw on a sweater, throw on a sweatsuit. Let's see the real you a little bit, because that's who I really want to work with. And if you think of a realtor, they're driving around with you in their car showing you properties. Don't you kind of want to have something in common that you can talk about other than the real estate? Otherwise, those are awkward. I mean, probably half the reason I got out of the industry because I thought those were such awkward conversations. Like, what do I say to this person who's sitting in my car who I just met? Those are painful ways to spend a weekend. But if they had known more about me in my personal life and I had known more about them, we could have connected on that. And so that's what I would have done differently if I were to go back.
How long have you been in the industry? I want to know.
10 years.
10 years.
10 years.
So that's, let's say 2015, 2014.
Yeah, 2015. I just started here January 2015.
At that time, social media wasn't really, it was there, but not a big thing, right? Yeah. How were you able to connect with your client or people that could do business with you? I know events, you host events. Apart from that, is there any other way you connect with people?
Events is a big thing that we do, which is a fantastic opportunity. I think it's the one missed opportunity. I think realtors get it now. They're online, they're doing the social, but they're not doing the events. Yeah. Most people are scared no one's going to show, and that does happen, and it has happened to us. So I'm telling you, it does happen, and you spend a lot of work. The beautiful part about events is that you get to spend, say, an hour educating people, just like I'm saying to do in your content. You bring on the expert. You can do that in a podcast or a webinar or in person, even better, because now you get to shake hands and greet with people. All with the idea of educating people. And you spend an hour and you now have educated, say, 20 people versus imagine taking, an hour-long coffee meeting with each person. That would have taken you 20 hours. And so it becomes great use of your time, the events. Another thing that I think people miss out on is working their database. And when I say database, people think, oh yeah, like I have like 100 names in my database. No, I don't mean like the names you picked up in the first couple of weeks that you're a realtor. I mean the people who are in your phone who are friends with you. My first task that Jazz told me to do when I became a real estate agent is call all of my friends and tell them that I'm a real estate agent and tell them that I need their help. And I was like, that's really? I don't really want to call my friends and ask for help from my friends. That's not something that I do. You don't ask your friends for help. I'm not used to asking my friends for help. My friends are there to be a good time. You know what I mean? Not to help me. But I did it anyways. And I made that phone call. And it is awkward. It gets less awkward as you do it more. But now that they know, you have to continue to call them. It's not just one time. This is where I went wrong. I called them once and I was like, now they know I'm a realtor. Well, guess what? Within 5 years, most of my friends sold their properties in with someone else. Somebody else, and that's my fault, not my friend's fault, because they weren't loyal to me. First and foremost, within my own friend group, we probably have like 3 real estate agents. You know what I mean? Or like within like their cousin, or they know somebody. Everybody knows more than one real estate agent, and if you're not following up with them, they're not going to think about you in the exact moment. Yes. Unless you're all over social or you're sending them emails, you still need to be making that phone call. So I blame myself for that, really. And I think that that's a huge opportunity. I think people think they need a big laundry list of these new names, cold leads that they get from ads. And it's not.
Agents always think we need new names.
Yeah. If you don't need new names, you have all the names, you're just not willing to call those people. And that's where the rubber hits the road. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the data of female in our industry. And I want to point that out because surprisingly, I actually did a little bit of research and I realized about 50 to 60% of agents in Ontario are female.
Yeah.
I mean, in Canada, actually, in general. And we have almost 80,000 agents in Ontario. And many female agents are more successful than men.
Yes.
But surprisingly, more male agents open up their brokerages, are managers, are business owners in real estate than female. What do you think caused that gap? Because, we have more female, we have more successful female agents. Not a lot of people are doing what you're doing to be a leader, to be a business owner, to not just be, I want to just be buy and sell. to maybe start their own brokerage, to maybe start their own team, right? What do you think make female in our industry to kind of lag behind a little bit on that?
It's interesting. I often hear people say we're in a male dominated industry.
No,
And I'm
I
always
actually
like,
didn't
that's
miss
not,
that.
I know. I always know that that's not true because look around our office. When you look at the top teams at our office during the awards, they're female run teams, mostly female teams, and just the industry in general. There's a lot of women doing incredible things. I think it suits the lifestyle of mothers very well because you can pick and choose your time, as well as, sometimes people, they get divorced or they've had children, they're moving back into business and they don't want to go back to what they were doing. And so real estate provides a really great opportunity to kind of build your own net worth, your own little business, so to speak. And so I love that about this industry. There's some kick-ass women. I hope I can say
You can.
okay. In our brokerage that I'm proud to be associated with.
Okay.
Very, very proud. Why do I think
there are not a lot of them in the leadership role,
Yeah.
or having their own brokerage, being the manager of a brokerage? Of course, we have some here, but even our brokerage, if you look at it, you have some.
Yeah. I mean, even on my team, right? Like our leadership role team has 4 men and me.
So I want to know, like,
what is
and I'm not really trying to be like, gender or anything here, but I just want to know, maybe there's something that someone like you, that you're now in that kind of position, can kind of push female to start, taking risks. Do you think it's kind of failure?
I'm sure it is. Because most reasons people don't do things are because of fear, right? Now, awareness might be another thing. Maybe some women are like, oh, I didn't even know those types of positions existed. My position, for example, chief care officer, that's a made up title. That doesn't exist in the world. That's not a thing, right? I think real estate can be so traditional and people just see it as such. They don't really see it as like, can I make this mega and big and can I scale? I think that scaling tends to scare not just women, but a lot of people. Managing scares a lot of people. Managing's not as fun as it looks, right? I know in many companies and corporations that I've worked with, if you were good at, say, sales, for example, and then you moved into a managerial position, you might suck as a manager, right? You might be good at sales. And so sometimes I think in this industry, like women might just be like, I'm content, I'm happy, let's not ruffle the feathers. Perhaps if your husband or your partner is the breadwinner, you might not want to take on unnecessary risk because things are comfortable. Why do it? For me, I tend to make decisions based on what will make me happy. And I think that's why I've changed careers so many times, because once I no longer feel fulfilled by something, I just move on. And I think real estate, people can become unfulfilled quite quickly because it is monotonous. I know it's like, oh, but you're walking in a different home. It's the same thing. Then the contracts are the same. People's excuses, people's problems that they're dealing with, they're all the same, and it becomes the same old. There was a year where I sold more than I ever had, in both units and in terms of commissions, and I was like, I'm done. Like, I don't want to do this again next year. I want a new challenge. And so maybe, my challenge is for other women who are listening and watching, like, is to challenge yourself. Like, you can be more, you can be something else. I hear imposter syndrome thrown around with women a lot. I think men go through this too. They might just not label it that, but men do it anyway. Like that, I think some men that I know do it anyways. It's like having that fear and saying, like, I might not know all the answers. I don't know how to lead. I don't know how to do accounting. I don't know how to manage or scale. Great. No one does. Do it anyway. And it's that belief in yourself. And sometimes I worry for the female gender that we're not raised with as much like vigor of like, you can do it. I think my parents did a pretty good job with me. They never really made me feel like a female at home. Like, it wasn't like, you're a girl, you do girl things. And I'm very feminine, but like, it was very much like, you set your mind to something, you can go do it. And so that makes me sad. I hope that women somehow learn. And that you're not going to get it from society, guys. You're not going to get it necessarily from your spouse. You're not necessarily going to get it from your family. You have to find it in yourself to say, I can do this. I will figure it out. I'm okay to fail and have egg on my face and look like a complete moron. At least I tried. At least when I'm 80, 90, 100, however old that we're going to live to now, you get to, on your deathbed, say, at least I tried. Because that scares me the most, that idea of regret. And so I think that's why I'm personally capable of kind of like taking the plunge.
Let's look at the two organizations that you're representing. REC Canada and From the Ground Up, which is the media company that you and
Jazz on together, yeah.
I know you do a lot of things more than media. I was part of the immersion program, which I told Jazz when I was on this podcast. It's one big decision that I think changed my business 360. And I always call my real estate agent business as a business because that is what it is. At the end of the year, I need to know, expenses, income, and everything, right? But I want to know, why did you start the immersion program? What did you and Jazz and your team realize that it's lacking within the agent? Because you focus a lot on agents and salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think was people were lacking that make you say, you know what, we have to start this program? Because for a lot of people, they might have different answer for the immersion program. For me, after Jazz, it's one of the best decisions I made in my business. So why did you start?
Well, thank you for saying that. We paid you offline to say that. No. We started a media company originally. It was called From the Ground Up Media because we were quite successful in using social media to help our business. And a lot of agents came to us saying, why are you doing this? What's the ROI on this? How do you do it? And we spent countless hours just kind of teaching people why we were doing that, really out of the goodness of our heart. Maybe we also like when people come to us for advice, so we like to give it. There was no rhyme or reason behind it. Then at some point we said, well, people are having a hard time executing on it because they don't know a videographer, they don't know how to set up the mics, they don't know what to talk about. So we thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity here where we can have this business where we actually help people start a podcast, we help them start short form content. What we found in doing that, though, was there's a big component that people were missing. So it's not just about putting these mics up, turning the camera on, and then that's your business. There you go. They were missing all of the nuances that needed to happen before, because what we realized was they don't even have a database. They didn't have a CRM. So who are you sending the podcast to? So it's great. Now you have a podcast on YouTube. You know how many people are going to find your podcast on YouTube organically? Like zero people. So you need to send out that podcast. Well, I don't have names in a database. Oh, well, you need to put names in a database. Well, which database? And how often do I email them? And how do I send an email? And which names do I put? Do I put the people from my phone in there or just new clients? And they didn't call their database. So if you're not calling your database and you're not asking people to follow you on social, how are people going to find you on Instagram? Guess how many people organically follow you on Instagram nowadays? Zero. We know I put out content all day, every day. It's crickets out there. It's very, very difficult to gain traction on these sites now because so many people are learning. So now that there's more supply. Yeah. So we quickly realized what is required first is setting the foundation for agents before they can even do content. And that's why we kind of pivoted our media company into now a full-blown coaching company for real estate agents. So we don't do the media side anymore. I mean, we teach and we help and we make connections for people, but we don't personally help them fill up a podcast, because what we really need to do is to help you get your CRM up and running, help you learn how to make phone calls, help you get the confidence to do an event, what types of events. And so we teach people that full gamut of things. So that was kind of like the trajectory as to why we started coaching. And I think it was with the gap in the marketplace, because there's lots of coaching companies, right? There's other coaches out there. I think what's unique about us is that we're actually still in the business.
Exactly.
Right? So a lot of coaches become full-time coaches, but now they're using the skill set that they learned from, say, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, to teach people nowadays. Many of those things still work, like those old school tactics, cold calling, door knocking, billboard ads. It's not like those things are dead. But what I think they're missing is, well, you don't know, coach, what people are actually saying on the phone anymore. You don't. Now, it's generally speaking the same, but when things shift in the market, what is it that you're saying to your client now?
Technology,
when we're doing it every day, we're making those calls every single day, so we can actually then advise the people who come in for our coaching is guys, we changed our script yesterday and it worked. Try this.
Well, based on what you just said now, I remember when I started the immersion program, I would say a senior agent in the brokerage as well asked me that oh, I saw you that you're doing the immersion. How was it? I said, it's great. We're still in it. And it was like, but they're just doing media now, right? They're not selling real estate. People don't know that Jazz make call. I was part of the team. I say, even when I was doing the immersion, I was part of RAC. And there's no single day I come to that office, see Jazz. He will always be on the call, not to his friend or his wife. He's calling client, he's talking. So people don't know that he just still make calls, you still make calls to sell real estate, which is strange. It's amazing to hear from you now that hey, we are selling what we are doing.
Yeah, we're trying to do a better job with that now, where we actually are showcasing content of Jazz making more phone calls because like I said earlier, you can't be a secret agent. Like you need to showcase that you sell real estate, and so we're trying to do better. I mean, every day I'm fielding email. Like I still call our clients. They're still calling me about pre-construction condos that they bought 3-4 years ago. I'm still fielding a lot of those phone calls, so I still hear the sentiment. Yeah, I think it's important to remain at least partially in the business. He doesn't need to be making all the phone calls, but is he running a team who's making the phone calls and he can get that data and bring that back to people? And so, yeah, it's unfortunate. And I think there's also this, if people don't want to do something, they're going to find an excuse not to do it. So chances are they just didn't really want to take the program or, and it's, they're not in the business anymore. And people like to kind of like put other people in their place in a little box, so to speak, because it helps them make decisions. It helps them feel better about themselves. And so we always say we're just looking for the people who get it and who get us.
Talking about the data, I want to ask you a question. Let's use the immersion data that you've collected. You've been able to mentor or coach or, help top agents and people that are just starting like me when I started 3 years ago. What do you think is the different skill set or attributes that you see from agents that are successful in the industry? Either the data you got from that immersion or that you've seen in general. What do you think are the skill set that the real quality features that those agents are?
Yeah, I think when people generally ask this question, I don't know if this is where you were going with, they want some like, someone's really good on the phones, or they know how to close. They have that I can turn anyone into a client mentality, or they send really good emails. I truthfully, after now having helped at least over 150, if not more people through this program, I think the biggest thing that separates the winners from the average is a mindset. It's something that people just believe, as we were already talking about with women and maybe having lack of self-belief. It's this like, yeah, there's problems, but I will overcome those problems.
Yes.
Yeah, I could have excuses, but I'm not going to make them. People who tend to come in and say, I can't call this person because I already know it's going to be an uphill battle. Like when I say, okay, let's call the next person in your database. They're like, I can't call that person because. And I don't really care what the answer is after because there is no really good answer unless they're like, oh, no, like they just had a death in the family. I'm like, okay, fair. Let's not call that person. Or call that person and don't try to sell them real estate. Offer condolences, like send them flowers, do something nice and thoughtful. It's just this like willingness to try, willingness to fail, willingness to look stupid, willingness to do the hard work, right? So it's a mindset. It's just some people have it. I think you can work on it. I'm not saying I've always been strong-willed per se. I've had times in my life where I've been down in the dumps and everything looked bleak and not so great. But I always kind of again say, okay, but in a year, I was saying like when you're 80, 90, what are you going to look back? What are you going to look back on a year and be proud of? If you didn't do it, if you didn't make the phone calls and you didn't show up to work, are you going to be proud of it? Or are you going to say, I made a whole bunch of excuses and now you don't have any money and you're sitting there wondering why? Right? So I think working on the mindset is probably the most important thing I think an agent can do. And you can do that by listening to inspiring podcasts, by listening to books, reading books, all on the topic of understanding that it's your fault. First and foremost, like whatever happens in your life, it's your responsibility. How you react to something bad happening is still your responsibility. And I get it. Some people have not an easy break, but there's always someone worse. There's always someone better.
Exactly.
So just going in with that kind of mindset and learning that skill, and you might get judged a little bit because of that. Like if you start listening to all this like foofy-foffy mindset stuff and your spouse or your friends are like, what is this crap? That doesn't work. you have to find a way to like do it anyways. Like if your mom calls you and is negative all the time, then maybe we need to figure out a strategy where you're not talking to mom as much, or at least you're not letting her get to your psyche. You have to be very, very protective of what's going on in here.
I want to ask you a question that actually happened to me when I was, I think after I led the team and after the immersion program, this podcast, I started recording long time. I didn't know what name could come up with and everything. And we always call this analysis by paralysis, like overthinking everything.
Yeah.
I remember when I started the immersion, the first thing you guys put on the book that you gave us was stop overthinking. And now I'm better. Obviously, honestly, I'm better. I make decision faster now so that when I fail, I know I have to move on, right? But there's still a lot of people there. It took me months to choose the name. And I still don't know the name until I just came back to you and say, Laura, what should I do? I like just choose any name and start. If you have to change the name, then you change. What will you say anyone going through that, analyzing everything 100%, how can they kind of get out of that a little bit to at least make the decision faster? Because if I didn't come to you, probably this episode 22, maybe we might not even have episode 1 yet.
I'm kind of chuckling inside because this is again one of those things where I say do as I say, not as I do, because I started my own podcast and I was toying with not the name but the sign, because I was going to put a sign on the back wall and I was like, what should the sign say, the name say? And I got caught in probably 2 months of this cycle as well, and Jazz finally was like, Laura, you tell agents all the time to stop overthinking and just pick a name, and you're sitting here having a hard time with it. And I was like, oh, he's right. Like, he so called me out, and I needed that slap on the wrist. In regard to a podcast name, I now just tell people, like, just call it the Your Name Podcast. My podcast is called The Laura Show. That's it. Simple. Our podcast originally that I started with Jazz was called The Real Estate Center Audio Experience. That's a long title, but there was kind of method to the madness at the time. We didn't think much of it, and we just, because we didn't know what we were doing. We were like now at least you can get some traction. No one was even talking about podcasting, so we're like, I don't know if anyone's gonna watch, so who cares what the name is. Then we changed it to the REC Experience. Yeah, and then it was the Jazz Tacker Podcast. So you can always change things. That's what I've come to learn in business and life and content, is like, you can talk about one thing one day and then you're allowed to change your mind. Give yourself the forgiveness, give yourself the permission that things are going to change. Again, I've changed my careers 15 times in my life. Maybe not 15, but like, it's a lot. Yeah. It's okay. It's okay to change. Says who? Who says that it has to be perfect right from the get? And you can't improve what you don't start. You can't. That's what I take out from you. And your podcast, episode 22, is way better, I'm sure, than episode 1. Of course. But that episode 1 is what's. But if you never started episode 1, you'd never do it, right? And it's like I always say, kids don't know how to swim. You teach them how to swim, and they're not good at the start, right? But if the kid is too fearful of even going in the pool, then they'll never learn how to swim. Anyone who at least goes in the pool will figure it out. The difference with kids is kids don't have the fear of looking dumb yet, because all kids look dumb. Right? We're adults now. We're like, oh, like our friends have it together and our parents think I should have it together and I got to look put together. Like, I swear to God, I came in today, we were laughing, right? Because I came in, I was like, my hair's it's like as perfect as it's going to get. Like, let me just sit here and so I don't ruin it. And then I stand up, I'm like, oh, my skirt's wrinkled. Like, half the time I'm disheveled. I look like a mess. I try not to. It's not out of like, I don't care. It's just, I am who I am. And it's learning to be comfortable and confident in yourself and not shaming yourself for making mistakes and not shaming yourself for failures. I think that would be my advice to people, although I understand it because I am a self-proclaimed recovering perfectionist myself. Okay. But perfectionist is just fear. It's just you not wanting to fail and look dumb in front of your friends. So the second you can get over that, I'm telling you, you get better as a person, and then what starts to happen after that, your friends actually start admiring you. That's it. For the lack of fear, because guess what they're having problems with? The same fear. I agree with you. I remember, and this actually didn't know I'm going to share. When I started my real estate, I told you I was in IT when I started real estate business. I started calling my friends, hey, I'm in real estate now, as everyone tells us to do, which was really helpful. Even though a lot of my friends still buy real estate without me because I call them once and then call them back. But I remember this particular friend. He told me,
I says, why do you want to become an agent? Come on, I know you to always want to control what you're doing. You can't control that. And that question really make me confused. Like, why would he say that I always want to control my environment? Like, it was a year and a half after that I actually understand that he was interested in getting into real estate as an agent, but he was scared. So that fear was what he was trying to transfer to me
He was
because
projecting onto you his own
exactly.
fear. Yeah, yeah.
And if I had kind of listened to him, because a year and a half after, guess who is trying to become an agent? The same guy. You understand? Who was also in IT, right? And I just look at it like when people are kind of going through their own fear, if you're not careful, they will want to kind of bring it to you and say, hey, this is how it's going to be. If he also said similar thing when I started podcast, he's now telling me, can I bring one of his friend that's also in business to my podcast? So I'm like, you are not against this thing when I started, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, for anyone listening, I just think if you want to do something, it doesn't mean you won't fail. Just do it because people telling you not to do it. Sometimes, or majority of the time, it's their own fear that
Yeah,
they are.
it's a good sign.
No.
There's a saying called like crabs in the bucket. Have you heard that saying?
Do you know this
Right.
is the same? This is the same. I discussed this exactly thing with one of my guests here, and that's exactly what he said.
Yeah.
The
People,
crab in the bucket.
so our whole point as humans, like everything in us is designed to like keep equilibrium, right? Like our blood wants to keep equilibrium. Everything is always to be comfortable and easy. We want to decrease stress because stress means like danger.
Danger.
Right? So everything is made to be like comfort. And so comfort feels good. And even when our friends start changing, that's uncomfortable.
Yes.
And then that's scary. And so people start to like cling on and say, no, 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 don't do it. And they tell you all the reasons why it's an awful idea. They look to giving you stats of how often realtors fail or whatever it is in their life that they don't want you to do because what they don't even know. It's not like they're intentionally trying to sabotage you. But what happens is if you start to succeed, that then is like a mirror onto them, showcasing to themselves that they didn't take action, they're not successful, they're not succeeding, and people don't want to feel that way about themselves. So if you stay down here with me, then we're good.
We're good.
Then we're good. And we can just live and die like this, which is fine also. Like, who am I to say that you shouldn't live comfortably? I just know for myself and for a lot of people that I know, they do want more. And so let's go get it. That's what I say.
Let's talk about your trip to Dubai. I saw last year you and Jazz and the team we went to Dubai. I lived in that country, in UAE, but the country for 7 years.
Wow.
And I lived in all the states, all the 7 states in UAE. Sharjah, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, I lived in everywhere. And I always, Dubai is always, UAE is always a special space in my heart because I love the country. I think it's an amazing place that no one knows is going to be what it is. But when you went there, which I believe is your first time?
It was my first time, yeah, my first time in the Middle East. So
Wow.
You have a lot more travel experience than I do.
Were you scared of, okay, now that you said your first time in the Middle East, I mean, a lot of media here kind of scares that in the Middle East women are not safe. Do you feel unsafe when you're in Dubai?
It's funny when I first got to the airport and we landed and I had to go through customs, I realized all the customs people were men, and that was kind of a little like jarring. And at one point, someone kind of ushered me over, and I thought, oh my god, am I getting in trouble? Like, am I not doing something right? Or, so I was definitely nervous, not nervous enough to not go because, as I mentioned, we're not going to let fear stand in the way of our goals. So I went anyways. And it turns out the man was just opening up another booth. God forbid they'd have a line in Dubai, unlike we here in Canada where the lineups for customs are forever. They're like, oh no, there's a slight line. Let's open up a new one. So he's just ushering me to a new place. Once I got out of there, honestly, it was the cleanest, safest feeling that I have felt in a long time in any big city. So it was a complete like made up construct in my mind. Look, I understand that maybe in the past it wouldn't have been that way. And I'm not saying, had I maybe went to some different areas and locations, it wouldn't feel that way, but I did not feel any restriction I didn't feel any fear, period. And I certainly didn't feel anything toward being a woman there. Like, I went to the beach. I wore what I normally wear. I didn't feel any way about it.
What do you think about your real estate? I've always, when I was there, I wasn't in real estate, or I should say, I wasn't a real estate agent, because I was still doing, renting the 3 apartments, renting 2 rooms out, living one. So maybe I was still doing real estate, but the real market, I wasn't interested or know anything about it. But you went there to, coach agents to, help the brokerages there. What do you think about your real estate there?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like in terms of investing in a place like Dubai, obviously people have done very, very well. I think had you invested 10 years ago, I mean,
Anyway, if you have
congratulations, you would have done very, very well. Do I think the next 10 years are going to look the same? Maybe. I don't know. Obviously, like the leaders of that country are saying that they want to continue the growth and that's the plan. And so you always kind of look to those economic factors when you're investing. That's why I've always liked investing here in Toronto, because we keep bringing people in, and so people are going to need a place to live. So I like those ideas. I tend to like investing in my backyard, like where I can like see a property.
See you in touch?
But maybe that's me not being as risky. I'm not from there. I've only been there once. I think if you knew it really, really well, you would know the right pockets. And I mean, you can of course get an agent there to tell you all that. So yeah, I think that there's definitely opportunity to be had there from not just real estate, but business in general. A lot of people are moving there. When we were there, I think they said between 80 and 90% of anyone who lives there is an expat.
Yes.
So the majority of the people who live in Dubai are not from there.
The majority of them are.
So I mean, that says a lot about that city and what it's doing. I mean, when I was there, I was like, I want to live here. You know what I mean? But of course, I love coming home and I come back. So I'm kind of on the fence. Like, I don't know if I would tomorrow go and put all my money there. If I had enough money to spread around, I tend to like places that have tried, tested, and true data. Like Toronto, we have like 60 years of data that's done very, very well. Places in the US where there isn't as much history. So you are risking it. I wouldn't risk it all in Dubai.
Before I let you go, because I know we've been having conversation for almost 1 hour, which I'm really happy that I finally have you on my podcast. But before I let you go, I want you to look back and say, and this is going to be a kind of advice for new agents. I want you to look back at Laura 10 years ago, starting out as a new agent, with what you've known today as someone that's been in the business for a decade, a leader, you've mentored a lot of agents. What do you think you would have done differently? Or what do you think you did at that time that was good that you continue? So this would be like some sort of advice for new agent on how they should start today from what you know now.
I can 100% tell you what I would do differently. As I mentioned, I wanted to be a luxury agent, and so I was really holding my breath for like $1 million listings. That was a bad idea. The reason is because they're not being transacted as quickly. So by the time I had one real estate conversation to the next real estate conversation, there might have been months in between. And there's just no way to learn how to play basketball when you only shoot twice in a year. You know what I mean? You need to be standing at the free throw line, shooting. And so I would advise people like do the leases, do the condo buys and sells. Don't let your ego play a role in the like, I'm too good for this. I'm above this. You're not above it. I wasn't above it. I am not too good for it. And I would have learned the industry a lot faster had I been transacting more and doing like putting more deals together. I think that would have been a lot better. What I would have done the same would be that I joined a team. For me personally, just knowing who I am, I love working with clients, of course, but I really love working with people. I love building something together.
That's why I left IT. I want to work with people.
Yeah. There is something so special when at the end of the year, you and the one other person, 3 other people get to look at each other and have a glass of champagne if you drink or whatever, you cheers and you look at each other and say, wow, look at what we accomplished in this year, or look at what we overcame in this year, right? You need people to be with you in the trenches. And of course, you can have partners at home that don't work in the business or family who support you. But I think you need to be doing something together, like where your hands are building something together. That is just the most exciting part. And I think a lot of people get into real estate and they stay solo agents. And that's cool. I mean, to each their own. I'm just talking about my own personal journey. there's nothing more incredible than when you put like different minds and skill sets together and you start realizing like your strengths are different than mine, so let's utilize that, and then let's, you know, dig deep and figure out what my strengths are, and then you start to operate more like a business. You start to buy back your time because you have somebody who's maybe making calls while you're doing the email write-ups, or someone who's editing your podcast while you're out doing events. You can scale that a lot better, and you can get your life back, because realtors don't have a life at the start. You like, there's no life to be had. Everyone hates you. Your family hates you. Your clients hate you. The society hates you. And you're out there trying your best, and you're literally running around like a chicken with your head cut off. So I think the fastest you can try to make your business operate like a real business, that's the best. And you do that with people.
Laura, I have a personal message a personal question before you go, because this is probably going to be the last one. I've seen a video of you talking about the challenges you're going through in having a child, and I never know that about you before. And I'm not saying that because you're here. God is not there. When I watched that video, I kind of cried, because I was like, wow, and she's still out there being strong. And you showed the video of how you put some, I don't remember.
Oh yeah, all the shots in my stomach or whatever. Yeah.
I have about 2 female friends in my network now that I know one of them is kind of going through something similar like that, and I know how it does affect her sometimes. She do call me and say this, and I just want to know, how do you think, with what you went through, I don't know if you're still going through that, and you're still out there doing business. Well, where's the strength? Where did you get that?
Oh my gosh, I didn't feel strong at the time. I can tell you that. I don't know why I started recording it. I think I always kind of look at a challenge. Like our real estate team, we had someone pass away quite tragically. And it was so sad. We were in such a dark place as a team. Like, our clients were leaving us. We're like, oh my God, and like, no one's going to do business with us again. And I remember just one day saying to the team, like, yes, but in a year, we're gonna be so proud, right? Like, as I've said this, I guess this is my theme of the podcast today. Like, what do you say about your past self, in a year or 30 years from now? And so I think I probably started recording it, not necessarily because I wanted people's sympathy right in the moment. I don't even think I posted that right away. It probably took me about 6 months after I had done it to post it, because sometimes you need time away from something to see the bigger picture. But I captured it knowing that this might be something that I would like to share one day. I'm not telling everyone out there to start recording their experiences with it, but what I did by sharing that, the amount of outpour and support that I got, the amount of people, men and women, who came up to me in the office, on the street, in the washroom, saying like, that happened to me and my spouse too, or that's happening to me, or that's happening to my sister or my brother. It's shocking the number of people that infertility affects and impacts. But a lot of people probably don't know that because no one really talks about it, because it's sad and people don't want to bring up sad things. I actually am still going through the journey. How do I get up every day? I mean, I guess I try not to tie my sense of self-worth to any one thing. So I am not a complete person if I have children. I'm a complete person now. I'm not a complete person if I'm famous, or if I make $4 million, or if I'm a realtor or a chief care officer. These are all just parts of me. They're just one aspect. And so I think if you don't put as much pressure on any one thing, it won't tear you down. It won't beat you down to the ground. That's not to say, like, I feel for people truly who they feel like this is their calling and they have to have children. I don't feel that way. I feel lucky in that I've like either talked myself through it, or maybe I just don't feel as strongly about it. And so I'm kind of good either way. Getting to that place where it's like, no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. Like, remember when you broke up with your first girlfriend or boyfriend, and like, you were like, I'm never going to survive this. This sadness is so heart-wrenching. Like, I could die. In fact, I'm going to kill myself. Like, it's so bad. And then you get over it. And now as like an older person, you're looking back and you're like, of course you're going to get over it. And if it happened again, I would also get over it. And so I think just knowing like that you've been through hard times before, you tell yourself like, I've been through hard times. This is just another one of those hard times. I'm going to get through this. There's a lesson here. And if you're like, screw that, Laura, there's no lesson in this, totally get it. But just trust me, you'll get to the other side. You'll get there. And then in the meantime, like, try to confide in somebody. I think being able to talk about it with some people and share a story and inspire somebody is a really nice feeling. Like, it made me feel like, oh, there is a reason that this is happening to me, because maybe the reason is that I helped somebody. And that's a good enough reason for me. So if you're ever feeling down, the first thing you should do is go help somebody. Whether it's buy someone a coffee in the Tim Hortons line behind you, say hello to somebody, help somebody across the street, give someone time when you wouldn't normally have given time. That starts to make you feel better. And then that becomes now a spiral up. And so I kind of use this as my spiral up, I guess. So I'm still in it. I'll let you know. I'll let you know when we're done with it. But I'll be sure to capture some more content around it, I'm sure.
I look forward to it. And I like that you said you don't let, having kids or not having kids be who you are. You are who you are now. And there's a lot of things I've learned from our conversation today about you personally, about the business, about the team, about what you're building, even about you and your husband. Because I didn't even know that he was a real estate agent as well. And I truly appreciate your time today. This episode is one of my goals when I started. I'm gonna have Laura on the podcast one day. And here you are, episode 22.
I swear to God, you started it off with like me crying, and like, no, you're bringing me full circle. Thank yourself, because you took the action. So thank you.
Thank you.